Once upon a time, in what seems a far-off land, if you saw someone walking down the street talking to himself, you'd think he was, well, crazy. Not anymore. 90% of American adults own cell phones. And whether talking or texting, it seems that 90% of the time, they are using them.
These days, the minute that people are alone, at a stop sign, at the checkout line in a supermarket, they panic. They reach for a phone.
MIT psychologist Sherry Turkle says high-speed connections have left us more disconnected than ever.
I study families who are having breakfast together, and every member of the family is texting. I study funerals, and people are texting.
At funerals?
At funerals. And the cover of the New Yorker kind of captured this. The whole family's at the beach, and each of them is on their phone.
Her book, Alone Together, surveyed hundreds of people about their plugged-in lives. Her conclusion, we have lost the art of conversation.
An 18-year-old boy talks about how he always would rather text than talk. And he says, I'll tell you what's wrong with having a conversation. It takes place in real time, and you can't control what you're going to say.
These days, texting is seen as a skill. In New York recently, thumbs were flying as teens competed for the coveted title of America's fastest texter. On average, 18 to 24-year-olds send and receive a whopping 3,200 text messages a month.
Is it too strong to call this an addiction?
I don't like the word addiction personally. I think we're vulnerable. I think we're smitten. We're like young lovers who are afraid that too much talking will spoil the romance.
We can't take our eyes off the things, even when we should. Security cameras caught this poor woman walking with confidence straight into a fountain. Whoops. She just got wet. This guy could have been killed as he nonchalantly strolled off a train platform. Around the country last year, there were over 1,000 emergency room visits for just these sorts of injuries. So where would we all be if suddenly we didn't have these precious little devices? If we had to give up the iPad and the smartphone and the BlackBerry, what exactly would happen? Could we even function? It turns out that these are not silly questions, as researchers here at the University of Maryland discovered.
It ended up being the most horrible experience many of them had ever in their life, according to what they self-reported to us.
Researcher Sergei Golinsinski and his colleagues asked students around the world to go without their cell phones for 24 hours.
The psychological impact was significant.
70% of them quit the experiment, saying they simply couldn't do it.
They felt a tremendous amount of boredom. They were bored without it. They felt emotionally detached from the rest of the world.
One American student reported, I was itching like a crackhead. Someone in the UK said, media is my drug. I'm an addict. A student from China wrote, I was almost freaking out. And a person from Argentina reported, sometimes I felt dead.
I think we become obsessive in our desire to keep checking Facebook updates and texts and emails.
Nicholas Carr, who writes about technology and culture, says there is a scientific reason why these devices are our favorite vices.
People have a primitive instinct to want to gather information, to want to know everything that's going on around them. And you can kind of see how that would help you survive back in cavemen and cavewomen days. Where it becomes a problem is when we create this new world for ourselves where there's unlimited amounts of information and we can't stop this compulsive checking.
If we can't stop, think how hard it will be for the generation that's never known anything else. Like this toddler, a YouTube sensation. She is so used to the touchscreen iPad that a magazine leaves her mystified. How does this work? Why isn't it responding?
The trend is toward ever more connection, ever more distraction.
And Carr thinks all this distraction is messing up our brains.
It begins to crowd out all the quieter, calmer moments when you might engage in reflection or introspection or contemplation.
Time now for everybody's favorite guessing game, What's My Line?
But decades ago, people were saying that television would rot our brains. Carr insists there's a difference.
It was isolated into certain periods of our days. You'd come home from work and you'd watch some TV, or you'd watch some TV on the weekend. Some people, the first thing they do when they wake up, check their email. The last thing they do before they go to bed, take another glance. And so this is the first time we've had a technology that is kind of imposing itself on us throughout the entire course of a day.
So, would it be smart to throw away our smartphones? UCLA neuroscientist Gary Small thinks not. He's used the latest imaging techniques to see what happens in the brain when people surf the web.
Here's your brain on a book, and here's your brain on Google. It's a very different brain.
Much more active.
Dr. Small doesn't deny that these devices sometimes distract, but he says brain scans show they also can help sharpen our minds.
We took a group of older people, and many of these people had never searched online before. And we just had them search online for an hour a day for a week, and we saw significant increases in brain activity, especially in the frontal lobe, the thinking brain.
Do you have a cell phone?
Of course.
You have a smartphone?
Yes.
And how much time do you spend on it?
I spend a lot of time with it. I'm hooked on it in many ways.
You admit it.
Of course.
Writer Nick Carr got rid of his, thinking it was intruding on his life too much. But everyone else we interviewed admitted to owning a smartphone.
I love my smartphone.
You're not afraid that you too will fall into this trap of becoming obsessed?
No, I'm not worried about being fixated.
Turkle's advice on how to avoid fixation: occasionally put the thing down. Look another human being in the eye and open up your mouth.
Talk to your child, talk to your partner, talk to yourself. You know, I mean, it's not about saying don't use your phone. It's not about throwing away your phone. It's about how to reclaim conversation.